If you think Explorers are too big, this might be the model for you. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. That's right, today we're talking about those weird shrunken Explorers of the 2000s that are great for kids, people that aren't tall enough to pull off the full Explorer body, or people that just honestly prefer smaller bodied guitars. I mean, I really like the shape and size of a Les Paul. When you switch over to an Explorer, it's a completely different experience. Some guys like it, some guys don't. So before diving too deep into the history, let's see what we're talking about here. Because truth be told, these shrunken Explorers, they don't have a lot of good documented history online, so I've done the research for you so you can kind of understand these things a little bit better. But being from the early 2000s, we still have the case shrouds on the original cases, but wait until you see this Explorer. These things are beautiful. Look at that, a flame maple top and a trans black finish. We move over here, we have like a Gibson Les Paul custom fretboard. What's our headstock look like? It's got the mother of pearl Gibson logo. I've actually never owned one of these before, so I'm excited to see just how this feels. Yeah, it is a little bit smaller, but it's not as jarring as I thought it was going to be. I would say it's probably about 90%. Not only do we have a flame maple top, but we have binding, so it's just like an 80s Gibson E2 CMT. Now, I will say the neck is much chunkier on this guitar. These are definitely more slim 60s taper. So if we line them up here, you can kind of see the difference we're talking about. So it feels like they shrunk it down a little bit this way and then made it a little bit less wide. Just for another reference point, here's the Explorer Pro in the E2's case. You can see the impression over here where it normally sits. And just for reference, here's the E2 back in its case. And just for fun, you can see the E2 doesn't even fit in an Explorer Pro case very well. Unless you're chopping out all the padding, and even then, I don't know if you'd be able to comfortably make it fit. Now we'll get the detailed measurements on the workbench, but I think this gives you the idea of how much smaller these are. The other big thing about these that you'll notice is we no longer have a pickguard on these. It's a pickguardless Explorer, so that kind of gives it a completely different vibe. But due to that, we now need an additional backplate, because normally the Explorer's toggle switch cavity route is just hidden underneath the pickguard, so you kind of got a dual backplate thing going on here. But this was the original run of Explorer Pros. They were done from approximately 2002 until 2005, and they were offered in a few different finishes. Primarily the trans black, which we're looking at today, and a really nice trans amber finish. So these initial Explorer Pros are definitely the most sought after because not only do they have this kind of new shrunken down body, but they're very aesthetically pleasing. However, this was not the first time Gibson did a shrunken Explorer. You could consider the prototype Explorer kind of a shrunken one. Nowadays, we generally refer to it as the Futura. It's just kind of got weird proportions. I don't know if shrunken Explorer is appropriate, but I thought it was worth bringing up. And then within the modified world, the very famous Eric Clapton Explorer, known as the Clapton Cut, where he thought that was an original factory deal, but it just ended up somebody chopped off the side of his guitar. In 1998, there was a limited edition run of those done by Gibson for a Japanese dealer, and then not too long ago there was also a custom shop version, but 1998 technically predates this 2002 model. But I think the most pertinent one to bring up today is the E90 and E90 double series of the late 80s, early 90s. That was kind of a Matthias Jobs signature guitar, which was also shrunken down about 90, but they had 24 frets, they were a little bit more extreme. But as far as the proportions being kept exactly the same, and you're just shrinking the body down by about 10%, this particular run of Explorer Pros is the birth of it as far as I understand. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But perhaps the next most interesting one is actually a version that has mini humbuckers. Yeah, those things are quite strange. I mean, they got all the metallic flavors. Also around that same time, there was a swamp ash version of this guitar made. Yeah, shrunken Explorer with a swamp ash body, that's a lot of fun. I think each of those are also worth documenting in this series. But then, part of the Guitar of the Week series for 2007, there was a tobacco sunburst version that had the dot inlays and still had the flame maple top and binding along it. Just not quite as fancy as the initial run. 400 of those were made. And then, as far as I'm aware, after that, it's not until 2011 when they bring this back. This time it's got zebra pickups, still has the binding, but they ditched the maple cap. So they basically just bound a mahogany body Explorer. Those are the main ones that I know about. Are there other runs out there? Maybe. Feel free to fill me in because these are a little bit hard to research. But if you're looking for one of these small body Explorers, the keywords are Explorer Pro, and then there's also another version of this called the Explorer, spelled X-P-L-O-R-E-R. That's what those mini humbucker ones technically are. Honestly, I wasn't expecting to like this guitar all that much, but now that I have it in my hands, I can see why this initial run is so highly sought after, because it really is just something all on its own, more so than just being a shrunken explorer, because in the past I'd never really liked these, but it's probably because I didn't realize that this was the first run of these ones. But I'm really curious how thick this maple cap is. Is it even a cap at all? Is it just a veneer? Thankfully, on my show, we tear them apart to take an individual look at their parts and specs. So let's go ahead and get on to it. Inside our little Explorer here, let's go ahead and learn all of its secrets. So let's start with our pickups. They are uncovered Gibson pickups with no markings on the neck, and it's the exact same thing in the bridge. Now, old spec sheets tell us it's the 496R 500T set, so these are the hot ceramic pickups. And we can verify that with the readings within the circuit. So 14.7 in our bridge, 8.48 in the neck, with the middle position for fun at 5.38. These are pretty aggressive sounding pickups. They're not going to be for everyone, but certain guitars, they sound better than others. For example, the Buckethead Les Paul, one of my favorite ones, comes stock with this set, even though usually I think these pickups are a little bit too crazy for my own taste. We've got some heavy scratches in the pickup ring here too. But let's go ahead and take a look at these cavities. So we have a long neck tenon. It's marked BL. That's likely the finish code, black. But you can see the construction of the neck right here with the maple block capping off our truss rod cover. Then yes, sure enough, we can see how thick the maple top is right here. I would say it's about 1/4 inch. So not as thick as a full Les Paul, but I wasn't really expecting it to be. The top will basically end just right where the binding is. But here's what our bridge pickup cavity looks like. More of the same. It says DSXT, which likely stands for Designer Series Explorer Plus top, maybe something like that. But this top is just fantastic. Honestly, this looks more like a Cobra Burst finish to me than Trans Ebony or whatever you want to call it. But this is one of the craziest tops I've seen on one of these. It's got okay movement in person, but it's just all the wood grain underneath it is just absolutely stellar. That's why I had to pick this one up to document it. Even though it is a little bit beat up on the back and you've got some dings on the top, this was just the example to get and share with you. As far as the dings on the top, you got a couple of them down here. Another one right there. You got a couple by your controls and a couple of other smaller ones spread throughout. But I'd say it cleaned up pretty good. Let's go ahead and get some dimensions here. So from the tip of the horn all the way down here, it's about 25 inches. Whereas I measured my other Explorer to be 27.5 inches, so about 2 inches shorter there. The neck measurement is where the neck joins to the body. All the way to the end is about 15.5 inches. Again, about 2 inches shorter from a regular Explorer. And our last measurement is basically the thickest part of the body, which is about 12 inches on this one, whereas I measured about 14.5 on the other. So essentially, if you're trying to decide if one of these is for you, just take 2 inches off of all the dimensions of an Explorer that you might have, and that's kind of what you have here. As far as our bridge and tailpiece here, just have a regular Nashville Style 1, PW branded, and we have a full weight chrome tailpiece. As far as our controls, volume neck, volume bridge, master tone, nothing too fancy there, with our 3-way toggle switch. Moving on from our 2-piece maple top and mahogany body, we've got a mahogany neck with an ebony fretboard. That's my favorite thing about the early 2000s era, is they were just slapping ebony on a whole bunch of stuff before the government came and ruined that around 2011. Then we have the introduction of Richlight, which the Richlight era is cool in its own right, but having straight up ebony fretboards on Gibson USA products is always cool. That's 22 medium jumbo style frets. Once again, real mother of pearl inlays. You generally only get that in the custom shop nowadays. It's a 12-inch fretboard radius with your standard 24 3/4 inch scale length. That's right, they didn't change that at all. It's just the body that's shrunk. Then I measure about 11 degree headstock pitch with about a 4 degree neck angle. Our nut width is 1.69 inches. That increases to 2.08 by the 12th. Then first fret neck depth is 0.82. That increases to 0.9 by the 12th. Here's that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. So it's definitely a slim C neck shape, nice and fast, but the only downside to 2000s era guitars is it's very common for fret nib gaps to occur. This example, yeah, it's there if you're feeling it. I'm not sure if the high E is going to catch or not, but you can definitely feel there is a very small gap in between it. Then the other thing that happens is the necks tend to shrink and then the fretboards stick just a little bit proud. This one seems to have the opposite issue where I think the fretboard's actually shrunk a little bit, but some of that's just the finish is a little bit thicker. This example's actually pretty mild. I would say there is a little bit more of a ledge for our treble side, but sometimes you'll see really significant cracking along these, but this one just has a little bit of finish checking. Over here on the treble side, you can see a little bit of finish checking due to that. truss rod cover on this one is blank, and here's what the rod itself looks like, and we just have our Gibson mother of pearl logo adorning our headstock. But now on to the back. Here's where all the player's wear is. I mean, this really got chewed up by some sort of a buckle or rivets in the jeans. This is definitely more so player's grade due to all that. However, I actually bought this one about 6 months ago. It's taken me a while to process it. This was sold to me as excellent condition. They had 0 photos of the back, said it was basically mint, and yeah, this is what shows up. Be careful buying guitars on the internet, my friends, because most people have no idea how to actually describe things properly. It looks like somebody added some copper shielding, so this must have been a gigging guitar that they were trying to cut down any type of noise. So this is the route that we don't normally have on Explorers for our 3-way toggle switch. Then this is the one that we normally have. Looks like the wiring's all the same, just Gibson branded pots with your regular ceramic disc capacitors. But again, you've got the added shielding. Then we have the newer style Schaller strap locks on here. That's the kind where the strap lock and the screw are all in one. Then our output jack is over here. Moving up the back of the neck, you definitely have a few small impressions, namely like right here. Looks like a strap has slightly worn through the finish in that area. And then you can't have an Explorer be complete without a ding on the back of the headstock. But thankfully, no breaks, cracks, or repairs associated with that. We've got Grover tuners on this model. But this is a pretty late production one, fairly late 2005. But what's really cool about this one is it's production number 499. So that means it was the last one made in the initial batch that day. And I guess they were just producing a lot of guitars, and that's why they had to add this batch number. Although it's very rare to see a second batch. Now it's time for our blacklight test. Everything is looking pretty even here on the top. If you're not familiar with what a blacklight test is for, it shows touch-ups and repairs. It also shows sweat absorption or lacquer wear areas. This guitar is almost 20 years old, so we do need a little bit of assistance just to make sure everything is peachy. And so far, I'm getting a nice even glow on the front. And the same is looking true for the back. Definitely helps you see all the scratches and wear. Then we do get a little bit of a sweat absorption area in the corner here, but our neck is perfectly good, and it doesn't look like we have any finish wear from extreme playing back here, nor do we have any breaks, cracks, or repairs to our headstock. So this passes that test. All said and done, it weighs 7 pounds, 3.3 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this tiny Explorer sounds. So far, I'd say the 496R 500T is a very nice pairing with this guitar. You can do your Metallica, but it cleans up really nicely at the same time. also roll down your volumes if you need it a bit cleaner. Now that we know all about the initial run Gibson Explorer Pro, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Absolutely beautiful guitar, and I really dig the tones that come out of this. Now, ultimately, is the smaller body Explorer for me? No, it feels a little bit too small, but I'm a pretty tall guy, so I don't have a problem with the full-sized Explorer, but I could see why this would appeal to some people. Because let's face it, Explorers are pretty big guitars, but what I really like about this one has nothing to do with the shrunken body, it's all the other specs. You got a cool finish, you got cool figuring on the top, you got an awesome ebony fretboard with your mother-of-pearl block inlays from Gibson USA, and it's just an all-around well-created guitar, especially if you're looking for an Explorer that has a slightly slimmer neck profile. When I had purchased this, again, it was just for a fun review and demo, but then I kind of fell in love with this, and then I was really sad to find all these extreme gashes out of the back when it was sold to me as, you know, excellent condition. So I'm kind of conflicted on this one. I haven't seen one that looks as good as this, so maybe I would sell this one for the right offer. But at the same time, I think it'd be fun to have one of these Explorer Pro collections because they're such strange, weird guitars, especially the Explorers with their mini humbuckers. So do I think these are worth the $3,500 plus that people ask? Maybe, just maybe, they're that good. But if nothing else, my friends, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.